The wedding invitation arrived on a Tuesday. Her wedding invitation. My wife, still legally my wife, was marrying the man she'd been sleeping with behind my back for 2 years. And she had the audacity to send me an invitation like it was a joke, like I was nothing. I stared at that elegant, cream-colored card with their names printed in gold script. Elena and Victor request the pleasure of your company. My hands were shaking, not from sadness anymore. That ship had sailed. No, I was shaking because I knew something they didn't. I was bringing a +1 to that wedding. And by the time the night was over, everyone would know the truth about who Victor Castellano really was. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning. Back to when I was just a fool in love with a woman who was already planning my destruction. I met Elena at a bookstore. Sounds cliche, right? But that's exactly how it happened. She was reaching for the same novel I was, some thriller I can't even remember now, and our hands touched on the spine. She laughed. I apologized. She said I had kind eyes. Kind eyes. I replayed those words for weeks. I was 34 years old, an architect at a mid-sized firm. Nothing special. I drove a Honda Civic. I rented a 2-bedroom apartment. I had a small circle of friends and a mother who called me every Sunday asking when I was finally going to settle down. Elena was everything I thought I never deserved. Beautiful, confident, the kind of woman who turned heads when she walked into a room. She worked in pharmaceutical sales, which meant she traveled often, dressed impeccably, and had a smile that could convince you to buy anything, including a lie. We dated for 14 months before I proposed. She cried, said yes, told me I was the most genuine man she'd ever met. The wedding was small, but perfect. My mother sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face, finally at peace knowing her only son had found someone. For 2 years, I believed I was living the dream. I worked late to save for a house. Lena encouraged me, said she was proud of my ambition. She started going to the gym more, said she wanted to look good for our future family photos. I thought it was sweet. I trusted her completely. That was my first mistake. It started with small things. Elena would come home from the gym glowing. Not just sweaty, glowing. Yeah, there was an energy about her that I couldn't place. She'd shower immediately, something she never used to do. She'd check her phone and smile at messages she claimed were from work friends. I told myself I was being paranoid. One night I came home early from a project that got canceled. Her car was in the driveway, but she wasn't inside. I found her in the backyard, on the phone, speaking in a low voice I'd never heard before. I know, baby. Soon. I promise. He doesn't suspect anything. She saw me standing at the back door. Her face went white. That was my sister, she said. She's going through a divorce. I didn't want to upset you with family drama. I believed her, because when you love someone, you choose to believe them even when the evidence is screaming in your face. 3 weeks later, I was working late at the office, or at least I was supposed to be. The server crashed, and we all got sent home early. I stopped to buy flowers on the way. Roses, her favorite. When I pulled into the driveway, there was a car I didn't recognize, a black BMW. I sat there for a full minute, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. I told myself there was an explanation. Maybe she was having a work meeting. Maybe it was a friend I hadn't met. I walked up to my own front door like a stranger. It was unlocked. I stepped inside. The living room was empty, but I could hear something. Music, coming from upstairs, our bedroom. Each stair felt like a mile. My legs were shaking. The roses were still in my hand, thorns pressing into my palm. I pushed open the bedroom door, and there they were. Elena and him. He was built like a Greek statue, muscles carved from years of obsession. He looked at me, not with guilt, not with fear, but with amusement. Well, he said, not even bothering to cover himself. This is awkward. Elena didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just looked at me with something I'd never seen in her eyes before. Contempt. How long were you going to stand there? She asked. Close the door. You're letting the cold in. The roses fell from my hand. I don't remember leaving. I don't remember driving. I just remember sitting in a parking lot at 2 a.m., staring at my wedding ring and feeling like the world had ended. You'd think the betrayal itself was the worst part, It wasn't. The worst part was what came after. Elena filed for divorce 3 days later. She didn't ask for time. She didn't suggest counseling. Well, she'd already spoken to a lawyer, had probably been preparing for months. And then I learned the truth. His name was Victor Castellano. He wasn't just some personal trainer at a local gym. He owned a chain of luxury fitness centers across the state. He was wealthy, connected, and he'd been sleeping with my wife for over 2 years. 2 years. That meant every late-night work trip Elena took, every girlfriend's weekend, every time she said she was too tired for intimacy with me. She was with him. I was the last to know. And everyone else? Everyone knew before I did. Her friends, her sister, even some of my coworkers had heard rumors. I was a joke. The divorce proceedings were brutal. Elena's lawyer painted me as an emotionally unavailable workaholic who neglected his wife. Victor testified as a character witness, describing how Elena had confided in him about her loveless marriage. They sat together in the courtroom, holding hands, while I sat alone. The judge awarded her 60% of our shared assets, my savings, my future. When it was over, Victor walked past me in the hallway. He leaned in close. No hard feelings, right? She was never really yours to begin with. And then he laughed. That laugh haunted me for months. I moved into a studio apartment across town. Couldn't afford anything better after the divorce settlement. I ate frozen dinners. I stopped going out. I ignored calls from friends because I couldn't stand the pity in their voices. My mother didn't know the full story. I couldn't bring myself to tell her that her son had been humiliated in the most complete way possible. One night, I sat on the floor of my empty apartment with a bottle of whiskey and a loaded question in my head. What's the point? I had nothing. No wife, no home, no dignity. And they had everything. I later heard through mutual friends that Elena and Victor were engaged. They were planning a destination wedding. They were thriving. Meanwhile, I was disappearing. But something happened that night on the floor. Something shifted inside me. I didn't want to disappear. I wanted them to pay. I put down the whiskey and picked up a notebook. Revenge isn't about rage. Rage makes you sloppy. Rage gets you caught. Revenge is about patience. I started small. I researched Victor Castellano, his business, his finances, his reputation. And the more I dug, the more I found. Victor's fitness empire wasn't as solid as it appeared. Well, he had 3 gyms, but 2 of them were hemorrhaging money. He'd taken out massive loans to fund his lifestyle. The BMW, the penthouse, the designer clothes. He was leveraged to the breaking point, and he had enemies. Former business partners who felt cheated, ex-employees who'd been mistreated, even a former fiancé who'd left him after discovering he was a serial cheater. But the most interesting piece of information came from someone I never expected. Her name was Simone Marchetti, and she was Victor's ex-wife. I found Simone through a business forum. She'd posted a scathing review of Victor's gym franchise, claimed he'd stolen her investment during their divorce and left her with nothing. I reached out. We met for coffee. Simone was sharp, elegant, and absolutely furious. Not at me, at Victor. But she'd been married to him for 6 years before discovering his affairs. She knew exactly who he was, a narcissist who fed on control and admiration. He collects women, she said, uses them, discards them. Your wife isn't special to him. She's just the newest trophy. But here's the thing about Simone. She wasn't just Victor's ex-wife. She was also a silent partner in his business. When they divorced, Victor had manipulated the paperwork to minimize her share. But Simone had kept records, contracts, communications, proof that Victor had committed fraud to push her out. She'd been waiting years for the right moment to strike. And now she had a partner. Me. Over the next 8 months, Simone and I worked together. We gathered evidence. We built a case. We found other investors Victor had cheated. Former employees willing to testify about his shady business practices. Even a personal trainer who'd been fired for refusing to help Victor cook the books. But revenge isn't just about exposure. It's about timing. Victor and Elena's wedding was scheduled for October. A lavish ceremony at a vineyard estate. 300 guests, an open bar, a live band, and they'd sent me an invitation. I didn't know if it was Elena's cruel joke or Victor's arrogance. Maybe they wanted to see me show up, broken and defeated, so they could feel superior. Instead, I RSVP'd yes, +1 fun. The vineyard was beautiful. Rolling hills, fairy lights strung between old oak trees, champagne flowed like water. I arrived in a tailored suit, the first nice thing I'd bought myself in over a year, and on my arm, Simone Marchetti. When Elena saw us, her face drained of color. When Victor saw us, something flickered behind his eyes. Fear. "What are you doing here?" Elena hissed, grabbing my arm as I walked past the welcome table. "You invited me, Bahama," I said calmly. "It would have been rude not to come." Victor stormed over. "Get out now." I smiled. "I don't think so. Your guests deserve to know who they're celebrating tonight." Before he could respond, Simone stepped forward and handed something to the wedding coordinator. A flash drive. "This contains financial records, communications, and testimony from 14 individuals Victor has defrauded over the past decade," Simone announced, loud enough for nearby guests to hear, "including evidence that he committed perjury during our divorce." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Victor's face turned red. "This is insane. You're both insane." But it was too late. The wedding coordinator, who Victor had apparently also stiffed on payment for a previous event, plugged the flash drive into the venue's presentation system. And on the massive screen behind the altar, documents began to appear. Bank statements, forged signatures, emails where Victor mocked his own investors. And then the pièce de résistance. Screenshots of Victor's messages to other women, sent during his relationship with Elena. Dozens of them, explicit, graphic, dated just weeks before this very wedding. The vineyard went silent. Elena stood frozen, her white dress suddenly looking less like a symbol of purity and more like a costume. She started, turning to Victor. "Baby, I can explain." "Don't." She ripped off her veil and threw it at his feet. Plus, the guests were already pulling out their phones. By morning, the story would be everywhere. Victor Castellano was finished. But here's the part no one saw coming. Not even Victor. 3 weeks after the wedding disaster, his creditors came calling. The publicity destroyed his reputation, and his loans were called in. He couldn't pay. His gyms were seized. And guess who bought them at auction? Simone. She'd been planning this for years. The lawsuit, the evidence, the timing. It was all designed to force Victor into bankruptcy so she could buy back the empire he'd stolen from her. And me? I was her business partner now. We'd grown close during those months of planning. What started as a shared vendetta became something more. Something real. Simone was brilliant, fierce, and understood me in a way Elena never had. Well, on the anniversary of my divorce, I proposed. She said yes. Victor Castellano now works as a personal trainer at a budget gym across the state. He rents a 1-bedroom apartment. He's banned from the fitness industry under his own name due to the fraud convictions. Elena tried to reconcile with me once. Showed up at my office crying, claiming she'd made a terrible mistake. I listened, and then I showed her the door. My mother finally knows the truth. She told me she's proud of me, not for the revenge, but for rebuilding my life when everything fell apart. And every morning I wake up next to a woman who chose me, not because I was convenient, not because I was stable, because she knows who I am. People ask me if revenge was worth it. Here's what I've learned. Revenge doesn't heal you. Yet it doesn't undo the betrayal or erase the humiliation. For a long time, I thought destroying Victor would fill the hole Elena left in my chest. It didn't. What filled it was something else. Patience. Growth. The slow, painful process of becoming someone I could respect. Victor and Elena destroyed the man I used to be. But that man was weak, naive, too trusting. The man I am now, he's careful. He's patient. He knows that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's living well while they watch, making them wish they'd never let you go. If this story resonates with you, like it, drop a comment. Telling me where you are, listen form, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories.